And this is your city, your county. And we're very pleased today to have some folks with us from the Algoma Fire Department. And we're going to go through all three of those individuals. Starting on my far side over here, we have Todd Haltaufderheid, who is the administrative captain with the fire department. And we welcome you to the show today, Todd.
Thanks.
Thank you. I got through your name okay?
Yep.
Okay. And next we have Tom Ackerman, who's the chief of the Algoma Fire Department.
Good morning.
Welcome you to the show. Thank you. And finally, Kelly Koss, who's the captain of the rescue squad and the EMS director.
Good morning.
We welcome all of you guys here. And I understand that we have something like 100 years of experience here, is that right?
Getting pretty close. I know myself personally, I'm with the department for 35 years. I know Todd is a little bit 36, and Kelly
34.
34.
Wow.
So yeah, we're got a lot of tenure with the organization.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. I came in with the thought, I said, well, you guys are all full-time, right? And you said to me, no, we're all volunteers.
Right. We're an organization of 45 members strong, and we are a volunteer and paid-on-call organization. Our EMS group is a paid-on-call group, so as the time that they're spending while they're on call, waiting for a service call, you know, they're getting paid. Our firefighting members are paid a stipend through the city. And so we use that as a little bit of compensation for our members, and we always kind of consider it like a clothing allowance, just for damaged clothing that you may come across during whether drills or actual events or participation. So works out well for us.
Oh, good. Do you get together socially and so on as well?
We do. We have a monthly, 2 monthly meetings. It's the first and third Thursday of each month that we have our regular drill nights where our firefighters get together, go through a couple hours of training. We have a training staff that puts together different scenarios for each of our training events, and gives us a good opportunity to stay current with, you know, our existing members and also any new technology or things that are going out in the fire service. We also are very involved with different fundraising events throughout the city. An example of this is just we hosted our 31st annual Porky and Pancake fundraising event, and so we look to raise our funds to try and offset some of the budget monies that are city funded, and through purchasing equipment and other things that can be used by both the fire department and the EMS group. So it works out really well.
That's one of my soft spots, is a pancake breakfast. You
Well,
can't
that's
keep
good.
me away from those.
That's
Those are
good.
Great. So you guys do good. So you must volunteer to cook all these pancakes.
Yeah, it's really a great turnout for our group. Just kind of looking at the roster for this past one, I know we had 100% of all the firefighters showed up at some point during the day, and it was nearly that too for the EMS groups. So yeah, it's our biggest fundraiser of the year, so participation, the more we get, the smoother things go, and works out very well for us.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, Kelly, do you have a normal job working, or are you?
I'm personally right now. I'm retired from my regular job.
Okay.
I was for several years working out many different places, but with the directorship, and my wife certainly just retired also from teaching. So now the little bit of compensation for the paid on call type time, but otherwise this is my job.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you get an awful lot of satisfaction from what you're doing.
Absolutely. I mean, all of us, when we're in the fire and rescue service, we're here because we want to do things for our community and our fellow citizens. So it's a very warm-hearted feeling that you can do something to help them, whether it's in a time of a tragedy or maybe something that's very minor, but you can give them a good feeling that they're they're cared for, other than just as a family.
Okay. How about you other guys? Are you both working or retired or?
Chief?
Myself, I'm just recently retired. I worked for 31 years for WS Packaging, and I'm recently retired just as of the end of May. My wife has recently retired as well, so we're spending some good quality time together and getting into some things that haven't had the opportunity to do for an awful long time. So we're enjoying it immensely.
Well, that's great. Very good. And how about you, Todd? Are you?
I
or-
retired last year from American Family. I was with them for 20 years as an investigator.
Okay.
And my wife and I are both prior law enforcement. I spent 18 and a half years with the Algoma Police Department.
Very good.
That's how I got onto the fire department, and my wife retired out of the Kewaunee County Sheriff's Department. So I'm doing this, and 36 years here, and
You've
we
been
keep
involved in the public interest, all of you fellas, for quite a while then, for sure.
Most of our adult lives.
Yeah.
I started when I was 18 with the Brown County Sheriff's Department
Wow.
as a part-time reserve. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm 63, so it's been a
Okay.
long run. It's been a long
Well,
run.
you guys look pretty good for your ages, so you're doing great. That's terrific. Any unusual calls that you get, or are there some typical type calls that you normally respond to? I suppose each one is different.
It is. Every call is different and unique in itself. One of the things that, as the public is probably aware of with today's society and the active shooter incidents that we've seen and very recently, as we all joined the fire and EMS organization 30 some plus years ago, that was something that was never really approached or whatever. And as of the last recent 2 or 3 years, with some of the events going on nationwide, we have been spending a lot of time training for active shooter events, whether it be in schools, business places. So it's really gone full circle from when we all joined in fighting fires, and we've now grown to different means of EMS responses, different means of active shooter type responses. So we do have a wide range of different incidents that we may get involved with. So those are some of the big transitions and changes that are probably most noticeable over the many years that I've been on.
I suppose you work with the police department and with the sheriff's department? And,
Yeah, very closely. A lot of the active shooter training drills are organized through the county sheriff's department. We have a good working relationship, at least I believe we do, with all of our law enforcement organizations in the county. We have good rapport with them, and so it's good that they set these things up, involve us in them, and it only makes us stronger that we can support them in any way that we can.
Okay. And let me ask you, Kelly, that because you're kind of in charge of emergency services and so on, what broad range of items do you face with that job?
Well, my personal job as a director, kind of oversee everything with the scheduling and administrative duties and making sure the reports are done correctly, so they can get sent to the billing company, so the patients are billed, or the insurance companies are billed correctly. But I'd like to say that, in general, the EMS group, we have, I'm going to say roughly 70% of our calls are for the elderly, the 65 and older population. So a lot of it isn't what I'm going to say true emergency type care. It's more that they need some transport to a higher level of a facility. But we also do have the down, the car accident type thing, and the fire department is involved with that also, as they come and will help with extrication, traffic control. But we work on a wide variety of different types of EMS calls, but I would say the majority is more with the elderly population, as people are just living longer. But
Sure.
with living longer, sometimes health problems become more happen more often.
Yes, yes, that's one word I hear occasionally, elderly. I don't think I like it that much.
I
but
guess we're probably,
I
our
hear
whole
it.
table up here is
Yes,
probably approaching
yes,
that, so.
perhaps, but I would like to think not. Well, let me turn to you, Todd, a little bit and ask you a few questions about you do a lot of administrative work, and we think of the fire department as racing out to fires, or the EMTs to racing to help somebody, or as he was saying, as Kelly was saying, helping somebody who's elderly. But I understand you do a lot with paperwork. What all does that involve? That's really necessary too.
I was the caboose in the train, and it kind of ran to me. So, but we're a mandatory reporting agency. The federal and the state government watch what we do. Our fire reports have to be reported. All of our run reports, and everything that we do. We're on a computer system. It's emergency services system that we maintain complete records of all activities: training, personnel, fire runs, service runs, rescue squad runs. And there's a number of reasons for it, and we've got to be right on. We also collect what's called 2% dues. The insurance companies pay the jurisdictions certain revenues every year as part of an insurance payment to cover cost of operations, and we have to document how we're using those funds and what we're doing with them. And then in the past, we have written and been successful in a number of federal grants. 16 years ago, we got all new turnout gear for our guys. We just completed another one for new PPE, self-contained breathing apparatus, and some turnout gear, and some smaller grants from the DNR. Well, when you do those, you open up your books for audit. So we have to make sure that our accounting is proper, our training is proper. They come in and look at the number of runs that we do every year. They can select when they want to audit and when they don't want to audit. We just need to be prepared for that. And then the rest of it is the monthly payrolls that are there, or the quarterly payrolls, and then any fire reporting. If we have a structure fire, then I step in with two other guys that are in training now as trying to establish fire origin and cause, and then make a determination if we're going to need assistance from a state fire marshal if it's an arson, or if it's an insurance matter, that we don't mess up their fire scenes for them, and stop what we're doing and preserve it and protect it for the insurance companies.
That must be kind of hard, isn't it? You're fighting a fire and you think, yet I have to preserve the scene.
Well, for us, we're so fortunate with us because Todd is one of the most accredited fire investigators within the state of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
He's involved with IAAI, which is International Association of Arson Investigators. So his expertise with doing that for 20 years for American Family and fire investigation, I said, our organization is truly blessed to have him here so that he can take control of a fire scene. He knows where to look for things. He's got a couple of other guys that he's mentoring and bringing them into those situations so that, none of us are going to be around forever. So it's inherent for us to better prepare them for the future and what's going to come of itself. So we're extremely fortunate for Todd for his fire investigation background, along with the administrative duties that he does as well. He spends countless hours, filing and doing reports and getting all that done so that, as he mentioned, in the event that the state or federal organizations come for audit, we're prepared and would have no problems with anything that they question within our department.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. Well, the experience of all three of you guys, Algoma is very, very fortunate.
Very fortunate
to have the experience and everything that you can pass on. What type of equipment do you have with the department? I know that, I look out and I say, oh, there goes a fire truck, and that one's got a ladder, and that's maybe a pumper or something. But what kind of equipment do you all have?
Well, I'm going to just give you a little bit of a breakdown as to what we serve. The Algoma Fire Department and Rescue Squad serve approximately 66 square miles of territory. Obviously, we don't do much to the east because of Lake Michigan, so everything is from, the north, the south, and the west. And And we also cover the entire city of Algoma, the township of Anapee, and roughly half of the townships of both Pierce and Lincoln. So, you know, the equipment that we use is servicing a wide range of different communities in the area. For the fire department side of it, we run with 2 engines. We have an 100-foot aerial ladder. We have a salvage vehicle, which is basically, I'm going to say, like an equipment and personnel transport. It's got a lot of things on there with regards to a mobile cascade system. There are SCBA bottles, spare bottles. There are 4 mounted jump seats, as we refer to them, with SCBA apparatus, so that they can, you know, don those as they get to a fire scene. We also have a brush truck, which is a pickup truck, which has Class A foam on it, so that we can do a little off-road firefighting in the event that we get a grass fire. And then we also have 2 tenders. They're 2 2,300-gallon tenders that we use for rural firefighting. Obviously, there are no hydrants within the rural area, so we have to bring water to the scene and utilize that. So we're very, very strong with that. Our mutual aid or MABUS partners with the surrounding departments we have a great working relationship with them, and utilize their services as needed throughout the community. So it works out very well.
I remember, excuse me, I remember seeing a fire which I think was up in the town of Gibraltar up in Door County, and I think I saw your department up there actually. That was on Chambers Island.
Chambers Island, I'm going to say, not that I recall, but
Okay.
I know in Egg Harbor a couple of years ago they had a large
yes,
restaurant
yes,
that burned up,
yes.
and I know we were involved with that. Last fall, we were involved with one of the Door County markets along the highway up there. I know we went up and towards that Egg Harbor area as well. So with the mutual aid and MABUS response systems that we have with, you know, the majority of the area departments, it allows us to offer assistance to other departments as well as receive when we're in need as well. So it works out very well for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds kind of like if there's a major fire, let's say in Algoma, that you're in charge of that, but then you bring in these other departments and they assist you, and vice versa. If you're going to Kewanee would be in charge, and then you come in and assist them. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
A couple of years ago, we had a large-scale fire response out at Ebert Enterprises, which is a little bit west and south of town. And through the MABUS system that we're incorporating throughout the counties, we called in agencies from as far north as Egg Harbor. We went as far south as Two Creeks, Mishicot, bringing in water resources to able to support the firefighting operations that we had. And it went over very well. The cooperation between departments is outstanding.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. And how does that involve you, Kelly? Do you use the same type of services for your aid for emergencies?
Yes, we also are involved with the MABUS system, like Tom was talking about, but we use it, I'm going to say more so almost on a daily basis, because in these small communities like Algoma or Kewanee or Luxembourg, we're all in the county, we don't have enough personnel and equipment if there is a major event. Basically, we know that we have enough equipment and personnel to have a couple of runs at one time, but after that, we need help. So what we've kind of done with our 2 neighboring communities, Luxembourg and Kewanee, is if both of our ambulances are out on calls, we will have one of them come to Algoma and stand by, so our area is still covered in case of a third 911 call, and vice versa. If Kewanee is out with their 2 ambulances, we will go down there and stand by for them.
So that's kind of interesting, and I've been amazed by hearing this over the last few years, that you could take over I shouldn't say take over, but you can go down to the Kewanee, City of Kewanee Fire Department, and you'd be kind of running that while they're off doing something else. Is that
Well, I don't know if you'd call it.
maybe
but-
not running it.
Yeah,
I mean, you're
we
not-
pretty much, when one of the other communities come here or we go there, it's more you are just standing by at their station, kind of just waiting, hoping you don't have another 911 call because no one
Yes.
wants that.
Yes.
But they're ready to serve, and now we're down in Kewanee, and if they have another 911 call and their equipment and personnel are transporting other patients, now we're prepared. And obviously, it sure helps with the computers and GPS now that I can find all the addresses readily available. 15, 20, 30 years ago, it was more of a challenge to
Yeah.
find where you were going when you weren't familiar with your community.
Take a right at the first bar on the corner.
Correct. You know, and that's what it was. You looked for guidance from the dispatcher because in your local community, I'm pretty confident that I can find every street and every address pretty much right away. But if I need to go somewhere where I'm not familiar with, now with GPS, you can just plug that address in and pretty much lead you right to it. But in the old days, you relied on the dispatcher because he knew where it was. He's looking at a map, and he would basically tell us where to go. And we did have the old style fold-out maps in the ambulances to try to help ourselves too.
I remember going to a fire one time, and the person got a call from, I think it was the dispatcher. This was many, many years ago. And they said, well, where's the fire? And the person who was there, whose facility was burning, said, well, it's the one with the smoke coming out of the top. So it was kind of, but I guess we've improved from that. Todd, let me ask you a question about how many, and because you're kind of the scorekeeper here, how many events are there per year in the county, in the city?
We're on a national trend of fires decreasing yearly. When I first started, we could be anywhere from 75 to 80 runs a year, and we're down below or around that 50 mark. Last year was one of the lowest we ever recorded, but we're climbing back up out of that this year already. Nationwide, it's a trend. The thing nationwide that's also a trend is the cost and the value of what's burning is far more expensive. When you do get a structure fire, you're into not $60,000 homes, but $300,000 homes. And like Tom mentioned, we've got a number of large dairy facilities within our jurisdiction and within the county that when they get feed fires or stuff to that nature, we're into large scales. So even though we're not running as much, we need to plan for a whole different level. I mean, when I started, we used to have a lot of the old dairy farms, and you could almost bank every year one might go to the ground, and thank God those days have kind of calmed down. But we're running anywhere, I say, plus or minus around that 50 number a year.
Do you see a reason? I mean, either locally or nationally, why these numbers are dropping somewhat?
Well, I think, we've got a pretty active fire prevention, fire inspection unit, and I think they're pushing that. I mean, the federal government is pushing it, and that's part of our 2% dues is we're required to go out to these businesses and check them and help them along and make sure they're in compliance to prevent that. But even the personal insurance carriers are requiring this of the businesses and stuff. I mean, businesses are being inspected because it's a risk to an insurance carrier, and they want to make sure that you're trying to prevent those situations, because when you do get a fire, it's not just the loss of the structure, it's downtime, it's business time, and you can face millions of dollars before you know it. And then one other big issue I've saw in 20 years with American Family with my investigative was product failures and recalls, and that cause fires. And for a while there were auto manufacturers were having problems, and I investigated a number of those. And then the dehumidifiers that were going up all over the United States, there were hundreds of thousands of those. And then one, sadly to say, is we haven't experienced it too much here, but I've seen it, is children and fireworks or matches or lighters is still one of the top issues that's across the United States. And then, of course, you've always got that that 8 to 10% that are gonna come back, that somebody intentionally set it up. So as we look at fire runs, I figure the percentage is 1 or 2 of those are gonna be questionable.
Yeah, and that's kind of your job to find out where something may be a little suspicious. We're right now, as we're recording this, we're in the middle of August. And by the time this runs its course, we may have a different fire danger. But what would you say the fire danger is right now, Tom?
The fire danger right now, it's like I said, or as you were mentioning, we're in what is typically a very dry season of the year. And we're not seeing that this year. Obviously, with some of the recent rainfalls and flood events that we've had within the city, your natural woods, fields, and whatever are pretty well green rather than going through the regular kind of dog days of summer and the droughting. So that's something that's really not been a hinder to us so far. As far as any kind of specialty things, we really don't have a whole lot of different seasonal events that come up. Obviously, as we move into the Christmas season, we want to be very cautious with some of the home decorations and Christmas trees, things of that nature that you're putting into your home. You want to make sure that you're using, if you're using extension cords, make sure they're heavy enough to be able to support the lights that you're putting up, making sure that if you purchase a natural Christmas tree that you're making sure that you're getting a green one to start with, watering it on a very regular basis to make sure that it doesn't dry out, because some of those things, whether you have a house fire or a fire in your home, are tragic during that time of year. So we want to try to avoid that as much as possible.
We don't need to call you guys out.
Exactly.
Unless we have to.
Right.
Hopefully we won't have to do too much. Let me ask you, Kelly, when you're talking about people being injured on the scene and you take the ambulance, do you usually go to Green Bay, or where do you end up taking these people?
Well, again, with all of the smaller communities, probably in Wisconsin or maybe nationwide, everyone used to have their own hospital. That's becoming a trend that is just pretty much going away. The small hospitals just couldn't specialize with the larger hospitals. So, in short answer to your question is yes. I would say roughly 75% of our calls go to one of the 4 hospitals in Green Bay. About 25% we will take up to Door County Medical Facility. But with that being said, our transport times are much, much longer. I mean, when we used to have a hospital right here in town, a typical call for us would take, maybe 20, 25 minutes. Well, now we still have that same call on scene time, but now we have to transport 30, 40, 45 minutes in one direction.
Sure.
And then you drop the patient, and then you come back. So if we go to a call and we have to transport to Green Bay, that ambulance and personnel are out of service for roughly 2 hours.
Yeah. So you actually take that ambulance to the city.
Correct.
And then bring it back.
Correct. Yes, we drive the patient there. Obviously, take the patient into the hospital, transfer, do all the proper paperwork there, and then try to get back in town in a reasonable amount of time. And thus, going back to what we talked about before, if that happens twice during that same time frame, now we don't have any more ambulances in town. So thus, that's why we would try to bring someone else from one of the local communities. And that works really well for us in the county. All 3 of the groups, Luxembourg, Kewaunee, and us, all are trained to the same level. We all have the same medical director, so all of our protocols are exactly the same.
That's
so
great.
that works very, very well for basically all of Kewaunee County. That no matter who shows up at your doorstep in that time of need, people are going to be trained the same, and they know how to handle the situation.
That's good. Okay, very good. Chief, let me ask you one final question here. Any big changes coming in the future? Any big needs for more stuff?
Well, we have a number of different pieces of firefighting apparatus that are getting up there in age. It's a big financial obligation to the city, and we're looking at some different things for apparatus down the road. As we had mentioned earlier, we're going through right now some turnout gear that we're getting replaced, but everything, it seems, in the fire service has an elevated price tag. I know a number of years ago, 3-4 years ago, when we purchased our last piece of firefighting apparatus, it came with almost a $450,000 price tag.
Wow.
And the price continues to go up. We have a couple of units that we're looking to replace in the coming years, and we're looking at some of those things.
Yeah.
But
for a community this size, that's a hard pill to
yes, it
swallow.
is.
But
Yeah.
you've got to do it.
That's right. Our personnel safety is the utmost on all of our responsibilities to make sure that our volunteers are, after an event or an incident, are going home to their families after the incident. And so firefighter safety and EMS personnel safety is priority number one. And if we can outfit them in the top equipment to do their jobs to the best of their abilities, that's what our goals are.
Yeah. Get out there and save lives and save what you can. And
Hopefully that's what we can do.
With other things. Well, we'd like to thank all three of you fellows today very much for coming. We've been speaking with the chief of the Algoma Fire Department, Tom Ackerman. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I don't know if I can reach all the way down there, but I will try. That was Todd Haltaufderheid, who's the administrative captain and the fire investigator, and also with Kelly Koss. Kelly, thank you so much for coming to see us today. And that's going to do it. If you have questions, I shouldn't say if you have questions, if you have an emergency, don't forget to call 911, but if you have questions, call a different number. Okay. We thank all of you for joining us today for another edition of Your City, Your County. It's been a real pleasure to be here today. Thank you, and hope you'll join us again next time. For Your City and Your County, I'm Bob Gray. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.